Okay. Hi and welcome. Welcome to the attendees joining. My name is Ronald Mwawaka. You will see my face as here and there as we proceed with the webinar. Thank you so much for taking the time. I just like us, or rather I'd like to request the participants joining to kindly go on the chat and just write the organization that you're representing. And yeah, we'll give people about 5 minutes, 4 minutes till 11:35 before we proceed. Again, my name is Ronald Mawaka. I work for the Kenya Red Cross, specifically the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs. I deal with matters communication. My kind request to all the participants, please go onto the chat and just write the organization that you represent and maybe your title, if you're comfortable with that. Would really appreciate. We are giving people just 4 minutes and then we kick it off at exactly 11:35. I'd also like to request my colleague Sharon to stop sharing her screen, kindly. Thank you. Again, to the participants joining, a kind request from the team. Kindly go on the chat. Just write the organization you represent. Thank you, Eric. I see we have Africa Regional Representative Network for Empowered Aid Response in the house. Thank you. We have Julius as well, OCHA, Regional Office for Southern and East Africa. Thank you for that. Yes, we have Mary Muya, Oxfam, Kenya. Thank you and welcome. We have Nancy Kadeni, GOPA, Meta. Okay, interesting. Thank you and welcome. We have Krista, National Society Development Advisor, Finnish Red Cross and International Aid. Thank you for joining. We have Dominic Stolaro, UNICEF Kenya, Chief Field Operations. Thank you. We have Hosea Kandago, Mid-P, Kenya. Thank you for joining. We have Sophie. Kindly allow me not to pronounce your second name. I might not say it well, but we have Sophie in the room, National Society Development Advisor, Swiss Red Cross. Thank you. We have Matsediso from TDIFRC Southern Africa. Thank you. We have Stella Chapniano, board member, Kenya Red Cross Society. Welcome, Stella. We have Ms. Safia Varji, the executive director for the International Affairs for the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs, ICHA. Thank you. We have Bwana Shadrach, British Red Cross Grants Management. Thank you. We have Sabrina Habib, CEO of Kidogo. Welcome, Sabrina. We have John Maingi, Kenya Red Cross Taita Taveta branch. Welcome, Bwana John. I will not be able to mention everybody, but thank you so much for those who are chiming in. I see we have Mohammed Bahero, ICHA Innovation Officer. We have Bwana Titus, yes, from Candle of Hope. Welcome. We have Maria, Partnership Development Manager, Finnish Red Cross. Welcome. We have Newton Washeke, National Youth Chair, Kenya Red Cross Society. Welcome. We have Miss Irene Joseph from ICHA as well. We have Bwana Wilson Opudo, the Research Manager at ICHA. I see ICHA is heavily represented here. We have Michael from Swiss Red Cross, country representative in Sudan. Thank you for joining. We have Jane Maonga from Oxfam, Kenya. Thank you for joining. We have Maria Twada, the regional representative of Eastern Southern Africa British Red Cross. Thank you. We have Michaela, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, country representative, NLRC. We have Jacob, who's also joining in from Mid-P. Thank you so much. Let the names keep coming in. We only have a minute. I think we need to start now. So I'll just do a bit of housekeeping. We have 65 people in the room. Thank you so much for making the time. Again, for those who didn't catch my name is Ronald Mawaka. I work for the Kenya Red Cross, but specifically for the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs. We'll hear more about that from the executive director herself. just to take you through just a bit of housekeeping here and there. So the modality of the webinar, we'll have the question and answer session towards the end of the webinar. Kindly put all your questions in the chat. We'll be picking them from chat and directing them to the specific panelists. Apart from that, for those who might not, I'd say in Kenya, our English sounds a bit different from other parts of the globe. So if you look at your Teams menu at the top bar, you'll see that we have chat, Q&A, and then to your right, we have the apps icon, and then we have 3 dots and it's written more. When you click on that, you have record and transcribe, meeting information, video effects and settings, audio settings, language and speech. So when you click on language and speech, you will see the option of showing live captions. I believe that will I'd say it will really assist with regards to people being able to follow with the meeting. Again, for the question and answer session, we'll do it towards the end. Please put all your questions on the chat so that we can be able to pick them from there. Apart from that, if you want to maybe use your microphone, you'll notice that all the microphones have been disabled apart from the panelists and the speakers. Kindly raise your hand. For you to raise your hand, just next to the people icon, you will see a hand there. Just click on it and you'll be able to raise your hand. We'll be able to pick your question from there, and I'll be able to also give you access so that you can be able to address the speakers. By and large, we're hoping for very successful and very fruitful discussions. At this juncture, without taking too much time, I'd like to hand it over to our moderator for the day. His name is Mr. Joe Mbalu, and he is the Deputy Secretary General for the Kenya Red Cross, and he also doubles as the Director for National Society Development for the Kenya Red Cross. Over to you, Bwana Mbalu.
Thank you very much, Ronald, and thank you everybody that has made it to join us for this very exciting engagement. To start us off, I would want to invite our Executive Director for the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs, Safia Vaji, to give us the opening remarks, and then we'll get right into it. Thank you very much, and welcome, Safia.
Thank you, Joe, and welcome everyone. Like Joe mentioned, my name is Safia, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's session. Today, we're joined by a distinguished group of humanitarian practitioners who will be on our panel, alongside our dedicated Red Cross and Red Crescent staff and volunteers. I really want to extend a special thank you to our panelists for joining us today as we navigate one of the most critical conversations of our time in the humanitarian sector. For me, I just want to briefly introduce the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs, what we fondly call ICHA. We are a knowledge hub that is hosted by the Kenya Red Cross. We were set up in 2013 with the vision and the mandate to be able to bridge the gap between frontline humanitarian practice and global policy through evidence-based research, innovation, and advocacy. We like to think of ourselves as engineers for growth within the humanitarian sector through use of innovation and providing the data needed by decision makers to be able to strengthen systems regionally. So this webinar is part of our ongoing monthly webinar series, which we've designed as a strategic co-creation space for various stakeholders in the humanitarian sector. ICHA has multiple thematic units focusing on innovations, climate, migration, data, and policy. And each month we're opening our doors to share high-level insights that drive the humanitarian agenda forward. Our goal through these webinars is to provide a platform for humanitarian discussions required to influence policy and practical action. We want our partners to see these sessions as a window into the future of humanitarian work and a place where research meets reality to solve the most pressing challenges of our time. So today's webinar is titled Localization in 2026, policy to practice. And this was chosen because we are continuously having conversations and discussions around what does localization actually mean. And I think for us, it's no longer a fancy word to include in policies or to include in our proposals for donor funding, but really it is a functional necessity for survival and for the effectiveness of our sector. Localization features heavily in the Kenya Red Cross strategy for 2026 to 2030, and it focuses on how do we strengthen our local presence, how do we strengthen our systems to be able to deliver humanitarian assistance as close to communities as possible. We believe that humanitarian action is most effective when it is locally led and it is globally supported. But we recognize that this is a journey and it's not a destination that we will reach in just one day. It requires system strengthening, it requires equitable partnerships, and it requires evidence-based change. And so we're all here today because we all want the same thing, a more resilient humanitarian system. By keeping these conversations going and discussing the evidence of what truly brings about change, we can journey together towards our goal. So today I look forward to hearing from the panelists about what does localization actually look like in practice, and I encourage all of us to engage deeply and help us turn these shared objectives into a reality. So thank you again for being part of the conversation today, and I'll hand it back over to Joe to now frame the context for the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Safia, for those welcoming remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just been welcomed to this session, and to start us off, we are going to have a keynote address that will then lead us to the next session. That will be a very interesting panel discussion. And to start us off, we have the privilege and the honor to be hosting Dominic Stolaro, who is the Chief Field Operations at UNICEF. And we want to welcome him to give us a keynote address, and then we'll pick it up from that. Dominic, welcome, and we're very happy to have you here to start us off in this discussion.
Thank you very much, Joe. Just partners, colleagues from governments, the United Nations, civil society, the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to join you today to reflect on where we stand with localization, not just as a policy agenda, but as a lived reality for children and communities. Nearly 10 years ago, at the World Humanitarian Summit in 2016, the global community made a clear commitment through the Grand Bargain for humanitarian development action should be as local as possible and as international as necessary. The motivation was simple but profound. Those closest to a crisis, local governments, civil society, communities themselves, are often best placed to respond quickly, appropriately, and sustainably. Since then, localization has become part of our shared vocabulary. It features in global strategies, donor policies, and UN agency commitments. But in 2026, the question before us is no longer whether localization matters. The question is whether we are willing to further deliver on it, to fully deliver on it. Globally, progress has been mixed. There has been movement, more recognition of local leadership, more discussion around quality funding, more emphasis on participation and accountability. UNICEF, for example, has measurable progress. As a Grand Bargain signatory, UNICEF has exceeded the 25% in Kenya, with over 50% of partner funding channeled to local actors in 2025, supported by investments in overheads, multi-year partnerships, and risk-sharing approaches. And yet, when we look across the system honestly, direct funding to local and national actors remains limited. Power continues to sit far from communities, and compliance and risk concerns too often override trust. This reality has been acknowledged in global discussions under Grand Bargain 3.0, concluding in October 2026, which places emphasis on quality funding, localization, and participation, not as parallel reforms, but as interconnected shifts in how we do business. As discussions continue on what the next phase of the Grand Bargain would look like, it is clear that it needs reimagination, not in its continuation as a GB 4.0. Its future hinges on its ability to evolve beyond its commitments and bargain framing and adopt a commons-based governance model that reflects current realities and geographical and geopolitical shifts. Kenya offers the powerful lens through which to view this challenge and also the opportunity. This is a country where crises are rarely singular or short-term. Drought, floods, displacement, economic shocks, and now climate stress overlap and compound, particularly in ASAL counties and urban informal settlements. In these contexts, localization is not an abstract principle. It is what determines whether families receive support in time, whether services are trusted, and whether gains are sustained once external attention shifts. Let me illustrate this with a concrete example. So during successive drought emergencies in northern Kenya, local actors, county governments, community-based organizations, and local NGOs were the first to raise the alarm. They understood early signs of stress, livestock movements, water scarcity patterns, rising child malnutrition. While international systems mobilized, it was the local partners who were already responding, drawing on community networks and county structures. UNICEF's role was not to replace that response, but to support and strengthen it. We worked through county systems and local implementing partners to scale up nutrition screening and treatment, expand water access, and sustain child protection services. We invested in partners' operational and financial systems, enabled quicker access to supplies, and adjusted our risk management approaches to allow faster, locally led delivery. The result was not just speed, it was also relevance, trust, and continuity, and critically, stronger local capacity to respond to the next shot, not just the current one. This is what localization looks like when it moves beyond subcontracting. It's not about handing over activities at the last mile. It's about sharing power and responsibility throughout the response cycle, from preparedness and planning to implementation to learning and accountability. This approach is increasingly reflected in how UNICEF Kenya works. Localization is not a separate pillar of our program. It is actually embedded across sectors and across our humanitarian development nexus work. We're shifting from short-term transactional arrangements towards longer-term partnerships with national and subnational actors. We're investing in systems, not only skills. For example, financial management, monitoring and learning, safeguarding, supply chains, so partners can manage quality funding with confidence. We are also working closely with county governments, recognizing that in a devolved system, localization and county leadership go hand in hand. At the heart of these efforts is a conscious shift in how we think about risk. Traditionally, humanitarian systems have managed risk by pushing it downwards onto local partners least able to absorb it. Today, global conversations are increasingly recognizing that localization will not advance without risk sharing, proportional compliance, and trust built over time. In Kenya, we are taking steps in this direction, but we also know and recognize there is a lot more to do. Because despite progress, the gaps remain clear. Many capable local organizations still struggle to access direct funding. Capacity support is often short-term and project-specific, rather than sustained and institutional. Women-led and grassroots organizations, so central to community resilience, continue to face the highest barriers. And most importantly, decision-making power often remains concentrated at national or international levels. If localization is to mean more than proximity, these are the issues we must confront. Which brings me to a call to action. Localization requires collective courage and collective change. It calls on governments to continue strengthening enabling environments for local leadership. It requires donors to provide predictable, flexible, and multi-year funding aligned with real risk and local realities. It challenges international organizations, including UNICEF, to continually question where we add value, where we should support, and where we must step back. And it calls on civil society to continue organizing, collaborating, and claiming its rightful place in shaping agendas, not just implementing them. Localization is not about doing less internationally, it's about doing better together. At UNICEF Kenya, our commitment is clear. Children deserve systems that work for them, rooted in their communities, and led as close to home as possible. Let us move decisively from policy to practice and ensure localization becomes not the exception, but the norm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dominic, for those very moving words. And there, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from the head of operation at UNICEF, one of the major signatories to the commitment that are summarized in the statement that I will be happy to lead a further conversation on. So from Dominic's keynote address, the first question to our panelists will be around what their understanding and the actual practice of the statement, the rallying call around being as local as possible and as international as necessary look like in practical terms. And to be able to discuss this much better, we have none other than the executive director for one of the most visible and active national organization working in Kenya, in Upper Eastern Kenya, in a place called Marsi. And I'm pleased to invite the ED for MIDP, Molu Tepo, to explain to us how what local is possible and international is necessary looks like in MIDP. ED Molu, welcome. You still unmuted? Perfect. We can hear you. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And
Good morning.
I'm happy to be part of this webinar. Yes, this is an interesting subject, and the question is as local as possible, as international as necessary. So MIDP is a local NGO which was born as actually a child of localization, although the intention was not there. ActionAid worked in Merti for a number of years, and when they were leaving, they asked the community, now we are leaving, what do we do? What do we leave behind? And so MIDP was formed to support 10 community groups who were working with the community at the time. And that was in the year 2000. And over the years, we have kept supporting the community, building the resilience of the community, working in different areas, in education, in food security, in natural resource management, in sustainable livelihood, and also working closely with the government, that is governance. And so as local as possible means being close to the community. Communities are the people who are affected by the different hazards which, if not handled well, translate into disasters. And so communities are the first responders. They are the people on the ground. They are the ones who are affected. And the institutions, be they elders, women groups, youth groups, grazing committees, these are institutions, community-owned, respected, who are actually the first responders. And so, as local as possible means information flowing to the community and information also flowing from the community, which informs the interventions MIDP and other organizations undertake with the support of other partners. And so it means understanding the context, especially for our partners, for the donors. They need to understand the context. There are some things which cannot be done on the ground, and so they need to understand that. We are local, and so when we say some things cannot be done, it is out of experience we are talking about. And so local means also sharing the resources, the risks. Most of the time, international organizations think, local organizations are not taking the risks. So there's need to take the risk, share the risk, and also in terms of also organizations doing due diligence. That means that requires also, and goes back to what I said about context. And so local as possible means also when we are budgeting, the budget reflects the local context. And also when we are also disseminating information, maybe a study is done, we want this to be disseminated. How to disseminate this information in the local language also means as local as possible. Look, going to international as necessary. It means for us, the local organizations, accepting the principles and standards and domesticating them at the local level. So international organizations need to understand that some of these principles need now to be translated into the local languages. A recognition of capacities of local organizations as international as possible for me also means that these international organizations appreciate and recognize the capacities within the local organizations and within the communities. And also as international as necessary, for me also means no direct implementation for international organizations. If the local organizations are there, why should an international organization go and implement? And also, resources also are scarce, and therefore, we expect also at international level that international organizations secure resources. We are not at that high level, so we think they are there for us. We are joined, the international and the local, we are joined. And of course, again, advocacy at the higher level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ejimo. I know this is an issue that you hold quite at heart. Now, asking the same question, and we want to hear the perspective of the mandate holders of all this work that we are doing, which is the government of Kenya. And we are privileged to have Ibrahim Khalif, the head of legal at the Department of Refugee Services, to try and also explain to us what this looks like to him as government. What does it look like for government with regard to the same question that we had asked E.D. Moro? Ibrahim, welcome.
Thank you, Joe. I hope you can hear me clearly.
You're loud and clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, for the opportunity, and I'm also humbled to be part of this webinar. And with regards to the question, for us as government, we might look at it from a different angle, on the sense that for us it will be mostly on policy basis for us to ensure that we have enabling environment and enabling framework for localization to happen or to be implemented. But maybe just to also reiterate that for us, localization is not only a policy promise, but it is a shared reality between the host communities and the refugees that we manage. But maybe I should also give a brief overview of what we do at the department. The department is basically established under Section 7 of the Refugees Act of 2021, which is the institution mandated to receive, register, and issue documentations to refugees and asylum seekers within the country, pursuant to the 1951 UN Convention and the 1969 OAU Convention governing specific problems of refugees in Africa. So for us, we implement the frameworks on refugee management, and for us, localization is key in terms of achieving the mandate of the objective, the mandate of the department, and also the objectives of the department. But for us also, or for the government, localization would also mean that there's need to build the government systems, to empower the government systems, and also to build trust in the government systems. For example, we are in the process of implementing a development framework known as Shirika Plan, and I know we are going to discuss about it. But maybe just to mention, even for us to develop that framework, which touches mostly on localization, most of the interventions, most of the activities are going to be implemented at the local level, at the county level. So in our development structure, we had to consider what are the local actors bringing on board. So we had to ensure that the refugees themselves are part of the governing structure or the implementing structure. The host communities are also part of the implementing structure of the Shirika Plan, and also the county governments and the municipalities that have been developed in Kakum and in Dadaab, Hagadera municipalities, which also play an important role to ensure that localization is supported and is implemented to the grassroots level. But also
Apologies, we seem to have temporarily lost Ibrahim. We had lost you the last 10 seconds. As we give Ibrahim some time to get his network back, we also wanted to ask the same question and get the perspective from a representative of UN OCHA, Julius Lesoina, who is here with us, and just to get his perspective on what as local as possible and as international as necessary looks like with the mandate and the perspective of UN OCHA. Julius, welcome.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, colleagues. I'm very privileged also to be part of the discussion on this very important topic. To respond to your question, in terms of what does as local as possible and as international as necessary looks like in practice for OCHA in 2026, it means that local actors are not treated as implementers at the end of the chain, but rather local actors shape priorities, shape targeting and delivery from the start. And OCHA's job is to make that possible by removing barriers, by coordinating the system, and bringing international support only where it adds real value. And just to elaborate, I think some of the speakers already mentioned some of the points that I'll elaborate here. What this means is that local actors have a stronger voice in decisions, not only in the implementation, but in practice, they should influence analysis, response prioritizations, and how assistance is delivered, as mentioned by one of the panelists who spoke before me. It also means that OCHA plays an enabling role, not a substituting role. We help create the coordination space, connect actors, and support response architecture, where local and international organizations can lead where they have comparative advantage. Lastly, it also means that funding decisions move closer to the affected people. For example, through pooled funds, which are very important because they can prioritize, we can prioritize funding through inclusive process that are closer to the operational realities. And we can now track, it's now possible to track flows, for example, on how much money clearly goes directly to local actors, including on granting. So the success is not about international actors doing less for the sake of it. It is about local actors deciding more, and that the international system become lighter, faster, and more supportive. I think that's in a nutshell in terms of what this means for OCHA in 2026.
Thank you very much. And then finally, we'll hear from Evelyn Situma, who's the head of humanitarian affairs at Oxfam, which is both global and a local partner. So Evelyn, what does this mean to, how does this look like at Oxfam?
Thank you, Joe. And thank you for asking this question, because this is very important for us as Oxfam. To us, when we talk about local as possible and international as necessary, it means we put the local actor as the default leader. And then the international agencies like us at Oxfam, we are only involved when we have really carefully analyzed and we find that we are justified to support. Now, this is also reviewed against what value addition do we have for this particular input. As you might be aware, Oxfam has been working with partners for the last, since 2017. And our local partners, what we try to do is ensure that they are supported, because we acknowledge that our partners have skills, they have knowledge, they have an understanding of the context, and that they are the shoe wearers. So when we come in, we are only supposed to be, complementing, guiding, and supporting. I want to give an example of how Oxfam has prioritized local leadership. What we do is we work with communities, we work with the local partners, including the government structures at county level, in ensuring that we support the different responses or programs by engaging them to do the assessments, program design, implementation, and evaluation. Now, this enables Oxfam to put the local partners and communities at the forefront. And we only have that clear value addition. And we also provide technical expertise that makes the communities and the local partners be more in charge as compared to us being there. We also try not to overshadow the local partners. That way, we make them more present, understanding their issues, and just being the in charge. Another thing that we're looking at Oxfam is we try to ensure we have balanced partnership. When we have said we want to have balanced partnership is when we do our MOUs with partners, we try to ensure that we let the partner lead, but our role is technical support and just guiding as much as possible. For example, we have the cash transfers that we do with partners. We let the partner do everything, but Oxfam will come in to verify they know your customer before we approve payments. We also have something around capacity sharing, where we are saying that as local actors, they share the context, they have the expertise, but we will come in to give our support in tools development and just ensuring that they're aligning with international standards, like the SPHERE standards, the core standards, and that whatever we are doing with them, we are guiding them in forms of tools and not overshadowing them because they understand the context. Every time you look at localization, we always make sure that we acknowledge that they understand the context, they're the sharer, and they have better knowledge than us. Then when we work around exit strategy, we also ensure that as we work with partners, we start scaling down and empower them so that we leave them strong. We improve their systems. We work with them to improve their systems so that even as we exit as Oxfam, they are able to manage. And then lastly, I want to talk about accountability. When we work with, for us, localization is around ensuring local communities are satisfied with what we are doing, because many times or in the past, we have been talking about success being measured against the donor. But now we are looking at what have we done? Has it really been impactful in the community? And those are some of the things that we're looking at. So with these approaches, we know that Oxfam now puts the community as the most important person. Everything that we do, we ensure that the ownership is rooted in communities and that we at national level, international level, we are just leveraging the support and strategically filling the gaps so that we don't overshadow them and give them the opportunity to be able to address the issues within them. So thank you very much. That's what we do at Oxfam.
Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, you heard from the various stakeholders that are in the humanitarian field as well as government agencies. I know there is a lot that colleagues in the meeting would want to contribute to or ask, and I will keep reminding the members to please post any questions, any feedback, any reactions in the chat so that we can manage time better. But then just moving on, following in the same line, I wanted to just ask, based on something that has come up across all the panelists that we're talking about, and I'll be asking a question to Molu from a perspective of a national non-governmental organization that is deeply rooted in Kenya. What does meaningful leadership look like when local actors like yourselves in MIDP are the ones setting the agenda rather than implementing a pre-designed project?
Yes, thank you once again. Yes, before I answer this question, I'd like to recognize the work done by Oxfam. We have worked with Oxfam, and I want to confirm what Elizabeth said, that that's exactly what happens when they engage the local partners. And we are where we are because Oxfam and other organizations held our hands. Thank you. So on meaningful leadership, of course, leadership, the word leadership itself is heavy, and when we talk of meaningful again, we need to unpack that. And so for me, leadership means at our level is to support the communities to make a difference for themselves, to support the communities achieve their aspirations, their development agenda and all that. And so when it is meaningful again, it means it covers almost everyone, that it is inclusive, and that no one is being left behind. Children, as mentioned earlier, women, youth, persons with disabilities. So it means leaving no one behind. So when we have, if we are to design a project with this in mind, then the process of actually coming up with our project means participation of as many people as possible, engagement of as many local institutions as possible, religious leaders, elders, women groups, youth groups. It means leaving no one behind and allowing everybody to have a voice in this. And in that way, then they'll be able to own both successes and failures. They'll be able to put in their resources in time, in kind, so that the project then succeeds. So meaningful leadership means that if there is a disaster, for example, then the local leadership takes responsibility first, and they reach to us and to the government after they have already taken steps towards, doing something for themselves, so that they don't just depend 100% on the others. Because even before this donor thing came up, before the formal government, our communities have their own ways of responding to their own challenges. And respecting meaningful leadership means respecting the customs that do not undermine the human rights, the rights of others. Meaningful leadership means, in terms of sharing resources, respecting what is already there. Because, for example, one time we were implementing a cash transfer project. And then when we went to one of the communities, they told us, here, we have 2 communities, ethnic groups here, and we share resources proportionally based on our population. So they said one community will get 60% and the other one will get 40%. But for us, the other areas, they were sharing these resources based on villages. So we were sort of shocked, but who are we to change that? If they have been doing that, if it has worked for them for all those years, then there was no way we could change, the way the community has been transacting business because of this single project. And because community has to remain cohesive for them to survive and so when new projects come and they come up with their structures, then they actually distort what is already there, what has already been there for all these years. And so meaningful leadership for us also means forward-looking, and that whatever we do, we need to look forward. Because, you know, these projects will end, this response will end. Then what happens after this? So our interventions need to look at the future so that whatever we do does not lead to harming of the community and the institutions and the structures they have. And so, yes, and also the meaningful leadership means also, you know, leadership at different levels. In our own household, we have leadership there. In our neighborhoods, in our villages, we have elders, we have the government. And so leadership, meaningful leadership means that our projects, you know, support the leadership structures which are already there. I think that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those very practical examples of moving from temporary aid to permanent resilience and reinforcing the humanitarian code of conduct. But in your speech, you mentioned something about design and strategy. And I would have a question for Oxfam and Eileen. Based on part of these commitments was this Charter for Change. So in 2026, how do we move beyond capacity building to a capacity sharing model that appreciates local expertise? And that is also in line with some of the contributions that I've seen posted in the chat. Evelyn.
Sorry, I was off. Thank you very much. It's good to hear that we are all referring to the different policies. One of the things that after the humanitarian summit that we had is the Charter for Change. And when we talk about capacity building, we basically are referring to commitment number 7 that has 8 commitments that we really need to look at when you talk about capacity building, which I really won't dwell in. But for us, when we talk about capacity building, as in moving from the capacity building to capacity sharing, we are talking about strengthening the local actors' capacity to share, as in this model that we really want to emphasize on doing or implementing, where we have mutual exchange, recognizing that the local partners have expertise and also their equitable partnership and their localization are really implemented. This also reduces the power imbalances that we talk about when you talk about local leadership in humanitarian response. So for us, what we're looking at is shifting the narrative. For a long time, we have been looking at local partners as not having capacity. But right now, what we're doing when we move in 2026, or even in the last 2 years, what we're trying to do is we are doing what we call capacity sharing and just working with the communities because they already have capacity. We want to complement, we want to enhance, and also connect with the other local system within. That way, we will build a strong system among the local actors to be able to respond. Because what we are also doing is we are recognizing that local partners are an asset and they're not like they don't have capacity. Another thing that we are doing at Oxfam is instead of us solely training local actors, what we are doing is we are trying to ensure that the capacity sharing is mutual. We as international actors, we recognize we have much to learn from the locals, because in the traditional way, and if you've looked at the charts that we have had, is that we come thinking we are the people, we have the knowledge, but then these communities have had capacities and they have been able to respond. They have been resilient for some time. So what we are doing is we at Oxfam, we are recognizing that and that we are learning with the local partners, because we realize that there are things that, yes, we might be an international organization, we have all kinds of, money, the vehicles and whatnot, but when it comes to localization, it is important that we understand and learn from the local partners. We also understand that context-wise, they know what really is happening. If we talk about security, if we talk about culture, the social network of the different communities, it's only the local partners who can give us that opportunity to be able to, learn. So we will learn that, and we'll come with our skills and also try to ensure that we are networking and linking them to the donors. I would say one of the things that we have done is, as we work with the communities or the local partners, we have the ASAL Humanitarian Network, and I think you have heard about it. It is coordinating the local partners, and they're supporting, we are helping and working together to ensure we have capacity enhancement. And it's a two-way, not one way, because we have realized different partners have different capacity, so we are tapping on that. Another thing that we have tried to ensure is that the power sharing and decision making. As we build the capacity of the local partners, it is important that we have that component of giving them power, because if we don't give people power, and you're only capacity building them, then it becomes very difficult to work. Then for us, it's more like it's cosmetic, because we build capacity for the partners, and we are also ensuring that we are empowering them to be able to reach out to the relevant networks, relevant donors, relevant opportunities for them to be able now to, tap on the different opportunities. And also we also want to ensure that they're able to make decisions. Many times they make decisions on response, and they'll come to us and say, this is the geographical area that we want to go and respond because of this, and we really listen and work with them. Then another thing that Oxfam is doing is we are moving beyond training. For a long time, we were just doing workshops and stopping there. But now we are looking at, after the training, what is the long term, what's the mid term, what the short term approaches and issues that we are working with. We have staff being seconded, even we have partner staff being seconded to Oxfam so that we walk the talk with them. We do peer mentoring and joint problem solving. So for us, as I wind up, one of the things that we need to look at for good practice when it comes to power share, capacity sharing, is that we need to ensure that we have that local-led consortia, like the AHN. Can they be able to be led on their own, and then we support. We also thought that it will be important to embed accompaniment in the different approaches that we have. Peer-to-peer exchange, and I know we have projects that we work among the different local partners where they do peer-to-peer exchange for learning, and that has come out very nice because they are able to compare notes and they're learning from each other. Then another good practice that we think moving forward would be good is to ensure that we are funding the system and governance. That is very critical, because if we don't fund the local partner systems, it doesn't work, because like I know many times we have had a partner coming back to us and saying, Evelyn, we need a monitoring system. We have been trained, but we don't have. And graciously, we have been able to look for funds and support some. And that has helped, because then they're able to do their program very well. So for me, actionable insights that we as NGOs and local partners need to look at is we need to explore co-designing programs with local partners because they have the capacity. We need to share technical tools while learning from local partners because they have the local context, which we do not have. We need also to advocate for direct donor funding to local organizations. Why we are saying this is because when you look at the different models, If we never allow them to have direct funding, it will never happen. So slowly, it will be nice to advocate so that they are able to be given funding, and that we are only supporting where appropriate for them to be able to stand on their own and let them grow. Another thing, I think, as we build accountability frameworks, it will be nice to continue prioritizing communities over external donors. Because when we do accountability, many times, even as I write proposals and the indicators I'm looking at is donor, donor, donor. Can we go back and check that we are able to ensure that the frameworks we're developing are prioritizing communities? Of course, donors are important, but then we should include the communities too. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Evelyn, for that. There is very robust contribution in the chat, and we will be getting to the questions. But this is when we talk about sharing expertise, this comes with some level of a threshold for evidence that this makes this decision. So I wanted to bring in Julius from OCHA to tell us how we can be able to use humanitarian research and data to bridge the gap between the global funding targets and the reality of local actors on the ground, especially after a point he had made earlier about the pool funds and the role that is playing. Julius?
Thank you very much, Joe, for the question. So in terms of how we can use humanitarian research and data to bridge the gap between global funding targets and the reality on local actors on the ground, we can bridge this gap by making localization measurable, by being honest about where the bottlenecks are, and by using evidence to redesign funding so that local actors can access it faster and on a more fairer terms. And this means that we need to make the gap visible. Too often, the debate on localization is driven by commitment, not by evidence. Tools such as fund tracking systems and country-based pool fund data hub allow us to see where money is actually going, including where indirect funding reduces the local share. Second, we need data to diagnose the real barriers. The issue is not only the amount of money, it is also compliance burdens, risk transfers, as mentioned by panelists who spoke before me, overhead restrictions, and the number of intermediary layers between the donors and the local responders. Research can help us identify which of these barriers matter most in practice. We need to turn this evidence into design changes. That means that not only increasing the direct funding, but improving the quality of funding, more flexible budgets, recognition of legitimate support costs, and stronger participation of local actors in governance and prioritization. If I give one practical example, the 2025 country-based pool fund allocations overview for national NGOs shows that more than 450 million was allocated globally to the local NGOs through almost 490 partners in over 70 projects. So this gives you a concrete example on the scale. So that the data is not just for reporting. It will also allow us to see where localization is working, where it is told, and what needs to change in funding design. And I see a question on the chat box. I don't know if I can reply that because it's related to your question. And the question is, for OCHA, could you share how you can reach locally? Let me just see the question again.
we will address. In fact, that's part of the reason why we're trying to rush through the presentations so that we can have a discussion. So don't worry about it. We'll bring it back. My colleagues are organizing them, and we'll be able to present them. But thank you very much. But as Julius was saying, and it has been mentioned by a few of the previous panelists around transitioning from generalized aid to specific system strengthening models. This brings us to the government's perspective, and I'm hoping Ibrahim has been able to get his network sorted, because the government of Kenya has gone up and picked up a very innovative, very brave plan, which they call the Shirika Plan, representing a massive shift from humanitarian approach to a development approach that ensures self-reliance through social economic inclusion of refugees and host communities. So Ibrahim, if you don't mind, how does this plan serve as a prime example of localization in practice within Kenya's national strategy?
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Apologies initially for my system, but we're good to go. And thank you for the question. And maybe if I can say something about localization previously that I wanted to say before the network got bad, is that for us, we look at localization in terms of policy and in terms of creating an enabling environment where localization can be easily achieved and be easily implemented. But when we look at the Shirika Plan is the government of Kenya's flagship example of localization in action or in practice. The reason why I'm saying this is that the plan aims to include refugees into the national development strategies, not only the national, but also the county integrated development plans, which aims to look at a shift from the traditional humanitarian dependency to more of a development-oriented approach, where the refugees are going to be allowed to access services both at the government level, at the national government level, at the county government level, and also at the private level. And the plan itself comprises of 6 pillars. The first pillar, as most of the panelists have said, talks about systems building. How are we going to ensure that we develop the government systems? How are we going to build trust in the government systems? Because we are saying in the Shirika Plan, one of the objectives is to avoid the parallel system of service delivery to more of a government-led development-oriented service delivery. So we want government to take charge in terms of service delivery. And that brings me back to the question you asked the previous moderator, when you asked him about leadership. How does leadership look like? How do they develop the programs? So for them is to implement the programs that have already been developed. So as government, we are trying to take ownership in terms of developing the programs within the refugee camps, in ensuring that the plan is owned by the government, and we are encouraging development partners to also build capacity for government, because the pillar 1 of the Shirika Plan talks about policy reforms. What are the legal barriers that are there in terms of access to services for refugees? And we are also looking at what are the legal and policy barriers in terms of localization. What barriers are there? Of course, we have allowed refugees to register community-based organizations, refugee-led organizations, and we also encourage partners. We do a lot of advocacy and sensitization in terms of ensuring that the development partners, the UN agencies, the international NGOs, they support the local communities and they support the refugee-led organizations in terms of implementing this huge plan. The second pillar talks about integrated services. When we say integrated services, we mean the services that come with the plan, the services that are going to be offered at the local level, be it education, be it WASH, be it health, be it human capital, skills development, all that at the local level. We have within the plan, we have an implementation structure. Initially, we had a development structure where we used it to develop the plan, but now we realize that when we come to implementation, it is important to include the voices and the opinions of the people in the ground, because most of the interventions and most of the activities within the plan are also implemented at the local level. So integrated services takes much of the budget of the plan, and it is the major part of the plan. Of course, systems building is also a major one, talking about doing away with the legal barriers, which we have amended, which we have managed to amend some of the laws that have actually been barriers to localization and to inclusion of refugees. But when I talk about shift of power and resources, especially with regards to Pillar 2 of integrated services, we are in a scenario whereby most of the activities, most of the interventions within the refugee camps are managed by the NGOs and the development partners. And we are talking of the government now wanting to take lead in service delivery of these services. So when we talk of shift of power and resources, my view of that is that the international NGOs we are talking about to go as international as necessary. I think we can come up with a framework. We are trying to develop a transition framework where some of these services will be transited to the government. Some of these powers, some of these resources are going to be transited to the government, so that the government can implement these services within the refugee hosting areas and the host communities. And most importantly, maybe what I failed to mention is that the Shirika plan is for refugees and host communities. It captures both the rights, the interest of the refugees and the host communities. So when there's a development plan that is going maybe to the refugee hosting counties, we try to balance to strike a balance between the beneficiaries in terms of percentage or in terms of numbers for refugees and the host communities. So with regards to that on shift of power and resources, especially with regards to funding, we are all aware of the conditions or the practical aspect of how the development partners in terms of resources is reducing. And that is why we developed the Shirika plan in order to allow refugees to become self-reliant. And that is why I'm saying there's need for us to have a more strategic way of financing to the government. Currently, what is happening is fragmented financing. We don't know what development partners are funding, what activities they are funding in the camps. There's parallel service delivery, there's parallel programs being run within the camps, and we don't have the mechanisms to measure the impact that these programs have within the camps. That is why we are saying we are also developing a financing strategy to ensure that we do away with the fragmentation in terms of coordination and also in terms of financing. And maybe finally, if you allow me, I'll talk about integration into national systems and also empowering the refugees to become self-reliant. The other part of the plan that talks about Pillar 3 talks about human capital skills development and economic development within the refugee hosting counties. This is something even us at the national government, we cannot implement without the roles of the county government and the roles of the community leaders and the role of the refugee leaders and the refugee-led organizations. So for us, and also the private sector, we are also engaging the private sector at the local level. We are trying to urge the government also to incentivize the private sector so that they can invest in the refugee hosting counties, because we are saying we want to build human capital, we want to build capacity for the refugee-led organizations, for the host community, but we lack the basic investment through the private sector in the refugee hosting counties. So of importance is that as government, specifically as the Department of Refugee Services, we are well aware of the importance and the need to make localization a reality, and we don't want it to be a policy promise. We want it to be a shared reality between the refugees and the host communities. And the main challenge that we have faced is on legal and policy barriers. But we have mapped the several laws that are hindering inclusion and localization as much as possible. And we are trying to amend them. It's quite a process. The process of amending a law is not easy. Some of which do not touch, are not part of our mandate. We have to liaise with the different ministries to also create awareness in terms of localization and also in terms of refugees inclusion. I think I will stop there, Joe, unless there's any other follow-up question that might arise.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. There you've had it, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. The one bold shift that the government is making in 2026 to make sure that localization is a reality and moves from policy to practice. So I want to open the same question just in very brief so that we can give time to get to address the very many questions and give the participants a chance to get to chime in. But as I do this, from the agency that I represent, that is Kenya Red Cross, our one bold shift is summarized in strategy 2026-2030 for Kenya Red Cross. And it's summarized into two things. That as an organization with a mandate for response, we are shifting from just response to resilience building with a whole of society approach. And we are looking, the second one is looking at our domestic resource mobilization and changing the strategy of how we do that, with our largest resource being our 300,000 plus volunteers and members, and our outreach within the 47 counties of Kenya, how we can work with the entities that are there. So I want to ask that question in closing so that we can, from the rest of the panelists, in no particular order, what is the one shift your organization is making in 2026 to ensure that localization is a reality and moves from policy to practice? Any takers from the panelists?
Yeah, so have I opened? So this is Evelyn. One of the things that Oxfam is doing is that we have a grant that is under local humanitarian funding that is Dutch, that is strengthening the local partners' capacity. At the same time, Oxfam has continued to give more than 80% of the budgets to the partner, and also ICR, which they use to strengthen their capacity. And because it's not something that you don't need to account for, the partners are free to do what they want with it. Thus, they are able to build their capacity and support themselves to be better local partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evelyn and Oxfam. The rest of the panelists? Just one bold shift. Yes.
Thank you, Joe. So for OCHA, I think the bold move is that OCHA is trying to make localization not only a principle, but a funding and governance reality. More direct funding, more local participation in decision, and more transparency on where resources go. And this means that first is to scale what works. So pooled fund, for example, remain one of the strongest tools for moving resources closer to the local and national responders and align them with humanitarian priorities. The second is focus on power, not only on the money. The test is not just whether local actors receive funding, but whether they are part of the priority setting, governance, and allocation decisions. This is what makes localization meaningful. I think I'll stop at that. I had one more point.
Thank you very much, Julius, and all the best as you continue to coordinate humanitarian operations. That we have.
Yes, I go.
Yes.
Yes, for us, multi-integrated development program, MIDP, since last year, we are implementing a project funded by the Netherlands government. It's called Reversing the Flow. It's on water security and climate adaptation. And under this project, We've been given 1 million euros for the next 5 years. And the beauty of it, which is about localization, is 70% of the money would be going to the community. And so our role as a local NGO is just to be the custodian. Sorry, we are just custodian of 700,000 euros. And it is the community using that money to implement their own projects. They are the ones they are the institutions who will make a decision, and they are the ones to monitor, and they are the ones to implement. Our role is documentation and learning. And I see Nancy Kadenje, who is also our partner in implementing that project as a knowledge partner. So we are walking the talk in terms of localization. Yes, and we hope this is a pilot and it will be there for the next 10 years. And we are hoping other organizations will be able to learn from this model and do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before we start bringing in the pending questions from the participants and give them a chance to also contribute, I wanted to invite my colleague at ICHA, Head of Policy, Gilit, for just a quick wrap up of the discussion that we have had. Then we will direct the questions as you have put them in the chat box. I don't know whether Julie is online.
Yes, I'm here.
Karibu sana.
Thank you so much. That was really inspiring and, nice to hear what we have and, our vision to localization. Thank you, Jombalu. So as we turn to our close, one thing is abundantly clear. Localization is no longer a peripheral conversation. It is our functional necessity for survival in the humanitarian space. Today, we've moved beyond what isn't working to map out a clear pathway forward. I just want to reflect what our panelists have talked about. Starting from mid-P, we have learned that meaningful leadership by local actors require risk sharing and equitable partnerships with international actors. And further to that, funding requirements should take into account local realities. So local actors should take lead in funding of these development programs. From Oxfam, we have seen the power of the capacity sharing model. They highlighted the importance of putting local actors as the default leaders as they are the shoe wearers. International actors can give technical support and move away from one-off workshops to walking the journey together with embedded expertise from the local level. From UN OCHA, we are reminded that we cannot treat Global South as a monolith that has happened for quite a long time. We need African-led, contextually relevant data to bridge the funding gap. Local actors, just to add to what UN OCHA mentioned, local actors should take lead in decision-making, which we totally agree with. From the DRS, from the government, we've seen localization in national policy through the Shurika Plan, proving that socioeconomic inclusion and self-reliance are the key to long-term stability. There is need for international investment in government systems such as the Shirika Plan to ensure that host communities, refugees, and county governments are included in the long-term development plans that meet socioeconomic needs of marginalized groups and crisis-affected communities. There is no discussion without proper action. And with this webinar, this is our call to all stakeholders that have joined us and those who will hear this recording. We cannot live here and return to business as usual. We all can attest to that. To make the 2026 vision a reality, International Center for Humanitarian Affairs, we call on every partner here to commit to 3 immediate shifts. Our main shift is investing in systems and not just projects. And by this, we have, as highlighted by the panelists, we must move towards a long-term and restricted funding that strengthen local institutions and volunteer infrastructure, rather than rigid and short-term projects that silos that we've seen over time. The second call, we are requesting to adopt, our partners to adopt a diligent policy shift, both in policy and research. Let us prioritize data produced by local for locals. We invite everyone to engage with our institution here at ICHA, as mentioned by our director, Madam Safia. We call and invite you to engage with us in ongoing financial sustainability impact study that we are conducting to help us build a blueprint for institutional independence across the continent. We also call our partners to commit to radical transparency, and this was spotlighted by one of the panelists. Whether you're an INGO transitioning under the Charter for Change or a donor reimagining bilateral models, we must be vocal about what it takes to make locally led action possible. As we close up, let us strive for a system that is community owned and partner supported. 2026 is the year we move from commitments to measurable actions. We are acting now. Thank you for your moderator. Thank you for our moderator, Mr. John Balu, our ICHA director, executive director, Madam Safia, our keynote speaker from UNICEF, and our incredible panelists from their respective organizations. We are grateful. And to each and every one of you that has joined us, we appreciate. And I hope from this discussion, we are committing ourselves to the shift that I've just mentioned. The conversation is not ending now, is not ending today, is not ending right here, but it is just the beginning of more conversations and actually practice in reality. Asanteni sana for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just as we log off, and I know we only have 3 minutes left. I don't know whether from Catherine's end, and Catherine is our local lead for localization at the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs, whether there's any particular question that was not addressed, so that we can direct to the panelists as we close. And I will request that we stay on for just another 5 minutes, just for this. Catherine, from your end, is there any pending burning question from the attendees?
Thank you very much, Joe. There is quite a bit of questions. Maybe I can have a few of them responded to. There is a question that which we can have our colleague from the Department of Refugee Services address. And the question is how we can minimize competition among the various actors, local actors, NGOs, as well as the UN agencies.
That was directed to who specifically?
It wasn't directed to any panelists specifically, but looks like a good question for the DRS, given the good work they've done with the Shirika plan. But of course, any panelists can take it as well.
So let's give them a moment to respond. I don't know that there's any panelists that would want to answer this. I think it's thrown to all of us. How do we work on this competition amongst ourselves, the various players? Ibrahim, any particular thoughts on this?
Yes. Thank you, Catherine, for the question. What we are doing for us with regards to the Shirika plan, we are trying to map out the roles of each key player. We are trying to map out what are the roles of the county government in terms of implementing the Shirika plan. what are the roles of the UN agencies, what are the roles of the development partners, what are the roles of the NGOs, what are the roles of the international NGOs. Of course, the roles will be drafted with regards to the mandate of each organization, so that we avoid the conflict. And then we have seen in practice, some of the organizations are still reluctant to maybe adopt a localization process, or they are maybe still holding onto the services that can be maybe implemented by the government or at the local level. But that is something that we are doing in terms of defining what are the roles, so that we avoid the conflicts that might arise. Yes.
Thank you very much. Any other one? That was the one and only?
No, thank you very much for that. We can have maybe just one more question. And the question is, now that the donor space is shrinking, how can we have the how different are ING? Let me just read it again. Now that the donor space is shrinking, how different are INGOs approaching localization to continue supporting local actors in ensuring humanitarian action is sustained? I think this can be taken by any panelist.
So how do we deal with this shrinking donor base? I think Evelyn had said something around it. I don't know that she would want to reiterate something around.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a very tricky question as we speak, because we are all experiencing donor funding cuts. But I think when we do the mapping and just agreeing amongst ourselves, it can be easier for us. Like for us, I know we work with AHN. So what we do is we prioritize. We look at, the 3 W's, who's doing what, where, and what's the gap. And then we do a vulnerability kind of triage. Then we now agree to give this particular partner. So that's what we do at Oxfam. But I know at UN they must be having something, and I can see Julia's hand is up. I will let him also talk about it, because for us, that's how we are working around it, so that we don't fund one partner continuously, but we are also ensuring that we are spreading the funding that we have to address the actual vulnerability, because we also do try using the different assessments that have been done by the government and the key teams that do assessments, like the short range assessment, the long range, and KIRA. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Julius?
Thank you, Evelyn and Joe. So I think, Evelyn, you've already covered. In terms of collectively, I think what partners are doing at the country level and also globally is to really to hyper prioritize, unfortunately, in terms of who we are able to support with the limited funding. So, for example, here in Kenya this year, what we've been doing is to really hyper prioritize and only target people in IPC4, for example, unfortunately, with the limited funding that is available. I think, so the point is really collectively to really hyper prioritize with what is available. Who are we able to really reach with the limited funding to ensure that we save more lives as possible. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it had been mentioned that I know the contributions are quite many, and the conversation will clearly not stop here. One of the ways that we are hoping as a localization hub to do this, to continue having these kinds of discussions, continue figuring out ways of collaborating more. All of us have been affected, but clearly the call to action is that it's about time that we moved these policies to practice, and we want to appreciate everybody who has made it to be here today. And we hope that we'll continue having these discussions, and we will eventually be able to turn localization policies and commitments into actual practice. So on behalf of everyone here and all of us who participated from across the globe, we really appreciate our 5 minutes that we had taken extra have just come to an end. I don't know whether there is any housekeeping thing from Ronald that you would want to announce.
Yes. On my end, I just want to also say thank you to the panelists, the keynote speakers, and the participants as well. I know there are quite a couple of questions that have not been addressed yet, especially on the question and answer section. And I know time is not on our side, so I'll urge the panelists and also the speakers to maybe have a look at them. And then once we share the webinar recording, it will go with answers to these particular questions. And we invite all the participants to share back your feedback in the email that will be shared after this. It will have the contact details where you can share back your feedback, and then you can engage in conversations further. From my side, it's just a great appreciation. And as Jilly said, just to echo her words, let the conversation not stop here. In fact, we are just beginning, and let us carry the mantle and push it forward. Thank you, Bwana.
Thank you very much. Have a very good day.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.